I'm joined by Barry Cowen, Fianna Fáil TD and spokesperson on housing, planning and local government. You have signalled that you're not happy with elements of this government rental strategy published yesterday, particularly in regard to this proposal for a 4% increase as being the max. You say that actual max should be lower than 4%.
Yeah, we've three areas of concern in response to the proposal by government that we got full sight of yesterday and analysed and scrutinised yesterday. First of all, I'd say, look, they've come a long way as a party in relation to this issue. When you consider they rejected out of hand similar attempts by the Labour Party to introduce rent certainty along with the rent controls that they put in place. And even when we discussed these issues with Fine Gael during the course of our discussions around the formation of government, I noted that they were very hell-bent on refusing our insistence in relation to rent supplement, in relation to increases in the housing assistance payment, and rent certainty when it was discussed then was ruled out of hand completely. So, you know, the system has got, the market has got worse. It requires an abnormal type interference in an abnormal market to try and stabilise it while supply is being ratcheted up. And we welcome the concept and the model, but the construct and the elements of it we have difficulties with. And I think that's only fair and appropriate that we make those views known with a view to discussing them with them and try and reach a consensus and allow this introduction of legislation which can be improved. That's all we're seeking to do.
Yeah, you said you got full sight of it yesterday, which implies you had partial sight of it prior to yesterday.
I've been discussing this issue with the Minister on and off during the course of various debates in relation to proposals around rent certainty by Sinn Féin and by the Labour Party, and in the context of us making a submission to the procedure that the Minister introduced by way of public consultation that he referred to earlier himself. And as he said, you know, there are elements of the rental strategy of which of course we welcome. But it's you know, suffice to say, it's our duty and our prerogative where we see fit to try and improve legislation to ensure that those that are renting these properties get a break and considering the terrible dilemma that they've been faced with over the last number of years, where there's been abnormal rents, abnormal increases in rents, and we simply want to play our part in ensuring that they are helped and assisted.
And is part of playing that part going to be tabling an amendment to the legislation, maybe reducing the cap from 4% to a lower figure?
It's one of the concerns that we have. We have a major concern around the geography that's mentioned within what's proposed.
No, but just deal with the rental, the increase for the moment. We'll come on to the other then.
Yeah, that is one element. You're at an abnormally high rate as it is presently, and seeking to give a premium over and above that for the next 3 years, in some cases, not in all, is not something that I think sits well with us or with the general public.
He says that's not negotiable, so might you just have to leave it for the Dáil to decide?
I met him last night. I've talked to him briefly again this morning. I'm due to talk to him again today. There is ample opportunity for discussions to continue between me and him. There's ample opportunity for us to lay before the House our amendments to his proposals with a view to all parties and none having their input in order to take cognizance of the convoluted nature of the Dáil presently. And as Thomas Byrne said earlier, ultimately a decision for the Dáil, but the Dáil will have to pass legislation that it is proud of, that it feels can have an effect and can achieve the results that we want to see, whereby those people who find themselves in this unfortunate predicament can have some certainty about the level of increase, about the level of tenure, about their future in relation to this issue, which just has to be resolved and has to be consensus gained across the Dáil for that to be done.
Do you think, I mean, just to pick up on the points made by our listener there, making the argument that actually rents in North Wicklow are higher than they are in Cork, do you think there'll be any difficulty about extending those areas of pressure, those, if you like, designated areas?
Yeah, well, you see, they're called rent pressure zones for a reason, and there are rent pressure zones in Dublin and Cork, definitely, but there are too in Galway, in Limerick, in Waterford and in provincial towns around the country. They may not be above the national average, but in relative terms, in relation to income in those areas, in Tullamore, in Athlone, in Mullingar and Portlaoise, they are abnormally high, and there has to be some assistance and offer to them in order for those too to get the same breaks as people in Dublin are getting, who just can't sustain the level of increase, who can't sustain the uncertainty around them wishing to enter the market, whether it be from a rental perspective or in relation to their opportunities to purchase in the future.
You said in your statement last night that tax incentives for landlords should be part of this package. He, in response, said, look, Michael Noonan is working, he has a working group looking at this. And anyway, you've got to bear in mind that it's at budget time you look at things like tax incentives.
It is, but we've brought forward, the previous Dáils, previous government have brought forward finance bills at different times of the year in order to respond to the national interest and in the public good. And in this instance, the tenants have paid the increase in rents over the last number of years. Tenants have provided the extra income for that sector. It's now incumbent on the state to play its part by bringing the mortgage interest relief from 75 or 80% up to 100%, by helping and assisting and not affecting the supply. As the Minister said, there are two ways of doing it, and this is the way we believe it can be done, where you're not asking tenants to pay that increase. You're not asking tenants to be foisted again with the responsibility of ensuring landlords stay in the market. The government can play its part, and it can be cost neutral over time. 70 million is the projected figure if you were to increase mortgage interest relief to 100% for landlords. But as I said to you, if it retains supply, if it helps to increase supply along with other measures that are mentioned throughout the strategy and that we've been calling for and others have been calling for too, well, then that can have the desired result. But in the short term, there has to be an interference in an abnormal market, and make no mistake about it, it is most definitely an abnormal market.
You talked about having conversations with the Minister. Are you going to talk to Sinn Féin as well? Is there a report that you're going to meet their spokesperson, Owen O'Brien,
just to clarify
discuss amendments?
Sinn Féin made contact with me yesterday in order to discuss our response to what the government had proposed and what the Minister had announced. And I simply informed them that I hadn't gone through it in enough detail. Our front bench hadn't discussed it in enough detail. We hadn't gathered the sort of opinions we would want from them and their respective constituencies around the country for us to make a formal response. And I informed them of that, and I said, maybe I'll talk to you tomorrow. They take that as a formal request to sit down and discuss matters. But look, of course I will. I'll discuss this issue across the floor of the House with all parties and none, as I said to you, with a view to arriving at a consensus whereby the legislation that's before the Dáil can be improved, and that's our responsibility.
Are you
that's what I want to do.
Prepared to table or support an amendment reducing the cap, that 4% maximum increase?
I'm prepared. As we speak, I've been talking to our staff, and we'll go back and continue to do so with the view to looking at the government's amendments, the proposals that are contained within the Residential Tenancies Act with 14 various amendments to give effect to the Minister's announcement yesterday. We will seek to amend that to meet and to in response to our concerns, and we would hope to debate those issues with a view to arriving at a consensus.
You're being a bit vague though on that particular point.
I'm saying
because he said that's not negotiable.
Look, we at this moment are putting down amendments in relation to the rate, in relation to the geography and the inclusion of other areas, and possibly altering the criteria by which this issue is addressed by virtue of the fact, as I said to you earlier, there are rent pressure zones throughout the country in different locations that have to be front loaded rather than waiting.
Are you prepared to vote against the government on the rate, on the maximum 4%?
I'm prepared, as I said to you earlier, to engage in the process that involves the passage of legislation and playing our part in seeking to ensure that the legislation is improved and has the desired effect.
Have you the deal done with them already, have you?
We've no deal done. We, as I said in that statement last night, as I'm saying to you now, and I'm saying to anybody from within Fine Gael who wants to listen, I am prepared to discuss these issues with a view to arriving at a consensus whereby the legislation is improved, and we think it can be improved.